Hi Fox, how you doing? The first game of the Candidates Tournament of 2014 in Khanty-Mansiysk, Russia is over. The game Andreikin Kramnik ended in a draw, and well, despite it was a draw, it's quite interesting. Now we'll see. The other three games are still going on, and quite a pressure. A player of white pieces they have in all these three games. Mamadyarov, Anand, and the other one is Karyakin. They have quite a pressure with white pieces. Some match, so some chances we'll have more than one decisive games here. But this is the first game that was over. Andreikin Kramnik. And there we go. Let us see what happens. Andreikin is white, Kramnik is black. We have a Nimzo-Indian, and well, the Nimzo-Indian is basically the main defense of Kramnik against 1d4, and he's extremely well prepared in it. So we can pretty much say that Andreikin had something in mind and something prepared if he goes into the Nimzo-Indian. Queen c2, the classical Nimzo-Indian. Castle a3, takes. Absolutely main line here with thousands of GM games here. And well, Kramnik plays d5, transposing into kind of a Queen's Gambit declines, in which black argues that white's queen on c3 is not very well placed, and he has much better development, which is basically true, but black has given up his bishop pair. There are also other many moves here. Knight e4, and after queen c2 we may have both d5 or even f5, a favorite of Mickey Adams. We have also here another move, b6, to play bishop a6, etc. We have even b5, an interesting gambit, and we have also d6 to try to play 4e4 after knight bd7 or rook e8, trying to control all central squares. So lots of moves here, but d5 was the choice of Vladimir Kramnik. Now knight f3, d takes, queen takes, and b6. A basic idea in the openings: if your opponent develops his queen very early in the opening, so try to take advantage of it and develop your light bishops. I mean your light pieces chasing that queen. So bishop a6 is in the air. White plays bishop g5, pinning the knight, and bishop a6 basically. Queen a4 here. Queen c2 is also possible. Now, for instance, knight bd7 seems logical. And here rook d1 was played by Karpov in a couple of games against an Iranian GM a couple of years ago. But here it's quite interesting to play e4. You're threatening e5, but also black can take on f1, so he does so. But now after h6, if white doesn't recapture, bishop h4, now that black has a room for his king, he can play queen c8. e5 is not a threat of trapping any piece anymore, and c5 is going to be played very soon. So this is more or less, black has more or less equalized the game. But queen a4 was played here instead of queen c2 after bishop a6, and now the point of this game basically I think it's a preparation battle. Mamadyarov versus Kramnik, with Kramnik with black played a couple of games last year in 2013 with this exact line. Now it's clear that Andreikin is supposed to have prepared something in one of those games, so he's following these games. This is obviously a home preparation battle, and it's interesting enough because after winning last year's World Cup against Andreikin, Kramnik just kind of kindly advised Andreikin to prepare better his openings for this candidates tournament, as he was more or less bad prepared for that World Cup, and he was more basically lucky to get into the final. So it seems, the young Russian GM has made his homework, or he's going to try to prove so at least. Queen d7 is the move Kramnik played here, just repeating the moves from his last games. h6 is another possibility, always there, and after bishop h4, of course, exchanging not a problem. Queen takes. We have h4, knight e4, g5, knight e4, and well, once again c5 must be played at some moment, but this seems more unbalanced for black, with all these pawns, which could be both a weakness or a strong point if they could attack. But interesting continuation that wasn't played. Queen d7 instead. And now, of course, if white takes, knight takes, black completes development and should have equalized easily the opening. No problems for black here. Instead, queen c2. Now the queen has moved lots of times, but that's sometimes what happens in this modern chess, not obeying the classical rules of development. Here c5, very basic break in the center in this opening, very typical. White takes, and now rook c8, improving even more his development, a clean solution to this pawn. If black takes right away, that pawn is very weak, so white could get greedy and worsen black's pawn structure even more and go after the pawn on f6, for instance. Queen e7, e3, if bishop takes, king takes. I don't know, white could even think about not castling but attack quickly in the king side with h4, rook h3, g3. Well, complicated position. White could choose to play more safe with g3, bishop g2, but queen b7, pinning, etc. So more or less unbalanced. Black will try to be very active to compensate his pawn structure. So instead, rook c8, more clean solution, just to try to recapture with the rook, not touch his pawn structure. Now white takes his opportunity to take on f6, g must take on f6, and now the move queen e4, still following the game Mamadiaro versus Kramnik, TAL Memorial 2013. Well, white is obviously attacking the rook on h8, but also has lots of sources of play on the king side, attacking the king, which is more or less unprotected here on g4. Here, well, instead rook d1 was another possibility, attacking the queen, but now queen b7 and g3 to put the bishop on the big diagonal. Rook takes c5, queen b1. The queen goes back to c7, so that after bishop g2, bishop b7, short castle, knight d7, and well, once again, it seems black has solved his opening problems. I mean, his pawn structure here is damaged, but probably won't be that important, and he has good coordination in the center and the queen side, and should have enough counterplay to compensate that. But after queen e4, this is going absolutely very sharp, and this is basically the reason I did this video, because although it's known to be more or less drawish as it was played in last year's Mamadiaro Kramnik, but still this is very sharp for the amateurs, chess amateurs' eyes. Now black plays queen b5 at the same time, attacking on b2 the pawn, and then he would be attacking the rook on a1. So what's going on here? He could have taken on c5, it seems, because here queen g4 checking f8, rook d1 could be played, and after queen b7, once again attacking b2, rook d2 to protect it, knight c6, queen h4 to check there. Unclear position for me, at least. I'm just following Injin's moves, as you can see. This is quite unclear for me. The point of going to b5 is that taking on a8 is not good at all, as after this queen takes b2. Black is obviously attacking the rook with check, so rook d1 is the move basically, and the knight after knight c6 everything is protected on black side, and white queen is trapped, and black is clearly better. White must take on c8, at least he takes a rook, bishop takes, c takes b6, a takes b6, e3 to develop, but after queen takes a3, material imbalance seems to favor black, as white has still to complete development, and black should be better here. That's why Andreikin plays b4, protecting c5 and protecting the pawn on b2. Now the b file is closed, kind of. Black takes on c5, and now intermediate interesting move, e3, attacking the queen and the bishop on a6 with the bishop on f1. Queen goes to b7, and once again, if white exchange queens, bishop e2, c takes. Black is doing very well. He has almost completed his development, and although his pawn structure is worse on the king side, he should have enough counterplay with his active pieces. So queen g4 check is the other source of a game of play by white. Now, couple of choices for black to go with the king. it's much better to go to f8 as Kramnik did, because after king h8 now b5. This is similar to what will be happening in the game, but with a little difference, as we will see. After bishop takes b5, rook b1, a6 is not that great, because after a4, f5, this will more or less happen in the game, but with the king on f8 rather than h8. The point is that after queen h5, the f7 pawn won't be protected after queen e4. So white will in some cases have the possibility to take it and have much more counterplay against black king than he will have in the main line. So take a look at this position. We will have a very similar one in the game. Now after knight d2 protecting the rook, queen takes a4. Now queen takes f7, and white queen is very strong, so black must be very careful here. Instead king f8 seems better, because after b5, bishop takes, rook b1. As you can see, this is very similar to the line we just saw. a6, a4, f5, queen f4. By the way, queen h4 is what Mamedyarov played in Tal Memorial last year against Kramnik. That game ended in this perpetual. So after queen f4, this would be basically the novelty of the game. Black can play queen e4, attack both the queen and the rook, and white won't have the extra possibility after, say, knight d2, not exchange the queen and attack the pawn on f7. So that wouldn't be an option here for white. That's why going to f8 with the king was much better. Here Andreikin takes on e4. Well, other options, we have a couple of checks for white. Queen h6 check, king g8, and seems there is nothing better than to check. Now instead of king g8, if king e8, bishop takes b5 check, a takes b5, and white castles, and he could have lots of initiative against black king, which is more or less in the center without too much protection. This is very sharp, razor sharp, and could be very good for white, as the engine seems to indicate. But still, it seems rather difficult that black will have a good position here, because his king is very vulnerable. And we have another check here, queen d6 check, but this seems even better for black, because after king g7, don't forget the rook on b1 is still attacked, so white has to exchange the queen in another way on e5, takes, but here to bishop e2, knight c6, a pawn is a pawn, and white doesn't have, or at least doesn't seem to have, much compensation here. So taking on e4, more or less the idea of Andreikin. It seems pretty much sure he had prepared this. This is the game he prepared over once again the one from the Tal Memorial against Mamedyarov Kramnik. So a takes b5 here. He takes the knight. The knight is taken on f3, and b6. Obvious idea to fork on b7 both black rooks. Now rook d8, getting away from that, taking the open file, and g takes f3. Of course, b7, rook a7, white has absolutely nothing here. So g takes f3 must be played. This is more or less what Andreikin had prepared, and well, not a great deal for a 27 plus 100 GM like Kramnik, but at least he prepared something. So black must just deal with this passed pawn and more or less equalize the game. Something we will just see. Kramnik will manage. Knight c6, f4, getting this e5 square, so the knight can't go there. The knight goes to b4, and the pawn on b6 isn't protected anymore, so the knight could go to some places here, trying to get active. Bishop g2, obviously attacking the rook on the corner, rook a b8, and now b7 to protect that pawn. But now the knight goes to d5, now interfering with the bishop on the diagonal, so it's not protecting the pawn anymore. White has to castle, complete development, but after rook d7 it is clear that the pawn on b7 will fall, and Kramnik has solved his problems, has solved this little task Andreikin put on him in this first round of the candidates, and the game is clearly going for a draw. Rook fc1, takes on b7, bishop takes d5, and after he takes d5, handshake, and the game was draw. This is more or less clear draw, and well, it could have been played a little bit more, but between these strong GMs, there's nothing much to be played. If rook takes c5, rook b5, and of course if white takes, this is in fact it is black playing for a win here with an outside passed pawn. This is much better for black, and otherwise rook c8 check, king g7, rook a8, a5, king g2 could be played on, of course, but between these strong GMs as these both Russian guys are, this is the result is pretty much clear. So there we go. The first game of the candidates was a draw. Andreikin versus Kramnik. Hope you liked the game, and thanks for watching.